Welcome back to Virtual Realms. I'm Ranger 1. Today we're going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to take a little bit of time and I'm going to answer a few of the questions that have come in the comments section below on the last couple of builds that I have done. Some of these questions are fairly basic. A lot of you may know the answers to these questions already, but if you do, then please be patient. There are a lot of folks that have just never had the opportunity to learn some of these basic building techniques. That will only take a few minutes, and then I'm going to show you just a few little technical things that I did in putting together the last build that I worked on. How I set up the building itself, what mods that I used and how I used them, and how I set up the entire ecology of that area out in the desert to make it look more like an oasis. Now the first thing that I'm going to show you is how to sink a foundation. This is something that a lot of folks just simply have never had the opportunity to learn, and it's a real basic concept. For this example, I have collisions enabled. In other words, these are the settings that you will find on any official server. And that way you know just how far you can go with sinking a foundation on relatively flat ground like this. And depending on the nature of terrain, your results may vary. But the first thing we're going to do is simply place a foundation. These are vanilla building components, by the way. I'm not using any mods in this example. As you can see, this wouldn't work very well for building in this ruin. Over here, I've used some modded pieces, but I have sunk those foundations into the ground so that they more closely approximate the normal ground level in this area, or in this case, the rather flat stone floor of this ruin. I got it that low by simply taking a foundation. I centered it in that doorway there to give me a good median point, and by happenstance, it just happened to work out that that went out to the edges of the building quite nicely in this case, with just a slight bit of overlap in most places, and that was perfectly fine. You can't see it from the outside. Take this standard stone foundation, and I'm going to place a standard wooden pillar in the center of it. We do this to give us a variety of snap points that we can work with. And by that I mean, if I pop up another foundation here, let's look over here to the side. You notice how that snaps in a lower position now? You may have to move around a little bit to see it. There's the normal snap position, there's the lower one. We're going to snap it in that lower position. I'm not going to destroy these pieces. I'm going to use an S Plus demo gun, just so I don't have to keep generating in new supplies. But if you're playing in a strictly vanilla environment, of course you'd have to destroy those, unless you're intending on continuing with your construction in this general direction. Let me get rid of that pistol. Alright, that's step one. Step two, go ahead and put the pillar in your new foundation that you've built. And we are simply going to repeat that process. Here's another foundation. Let's come over here. Now it's not wanting to hit that lower point quite as easily, and that's fine. Just hit Q, and if you hit Q, it'll find any alternative snap points that may be available. This works even with completely vanilla pieces. Go ahead, boom. I'm going to snatch these back up. You guys are being awfully loud for little babies. Alright, away with the pistol. Put in another pillar. We rinse and repeat. We're going to keep going down just as far as we can. Let's see how far we get. Okay, that's as far down as we can go, because it's going to turn pink on us when we hit that lower position. And you see that's a little bit higher than what we've done over here. If we want to get it down that extra little bit, I'd have to go in and in my host settings, I'd have to turn off collisions. And that's fine if you're on a modded server, a dedicated server that someone is hosting. They probably already have that turned off. Or if you're in single player like I am right now. But if it's turned on, this level is still workable. I could have used that level all the way through this ruin and it would have been just fine. I'd have wanted to put maybe some steps there, or some sort of construction to let me step up into it a little bit more easily, although I can still step up on that without such. That's really not a problem. And the doorways in this particular building are high enough to where it wouldn't have been a problem to get through the doorway. The windows, on the other hand, well, it would have been just about flush with the bottom of that window. But these are overly large windows. Usually windows in a ruin, if they exist at all, aren't quite that close to the floor anyway. So you could build perfectly fine just as we are. Now I'm going to take a moment and pop out, and I'm going to change that setting and come back with collisions turned off. Okay, now we're back. I have collisions disabled, and let's see how low we can go now. Let's go ahead and get rid of this and this. Put our pillar over here. And now, if I hit Q, I can go lower still. And that means I can get this really as low as I need it to be. Let's go ahead and put one more. Now that is about the level that I have over here, just slightly above the normal floor level of this particular ruin. And if we really wanted to, we could go even lower. Now that might be a good level if I wanted to add, let's say, a paving stone look all the way out to the gate. I'm not going to do that, but I'll show you what it looks like here. There we go. I could take that straight on out, and that would be a very, very nice look for a walkway going all the way out to that gate. Let's lay in another one just to see. Yep, that'd be just about perfect. And of course I can always get rid of this. There we go. Well, hopefully that gives you a pretty good idea of what you can do as far as sinking foundations. I'm not going to enable collisions for the rest of this video just because I never build that way, and I think most of you that are watching this series, you're in a position where you can use mods, and I'm going to keep going from here, although a lot of the stuff that I did in my later builds really didn't rely on having collisions off. It was just a matter of getting creative with what I had. How did you get horse? Really? Alright, never mind. I think it's time to head over to the Oasis build, and we'll take a little bit closer look at that. Okay, here we are back at the Oasis. The primary construction mod that I used for the outer walls is the Castles, Keeps, and Forts mod, and I used it for a variety of reasons. It works fairly well with a lot of the decorative pieces that I wanted to use from other mods, such as this concrete patio from the Pimp My Home mod or that fountain from the SteamPunk mod. But there were a couple of other reasons too. One of those being I could inset the walls from other mods in certain situations inside these walls from the Castles, Keeps, and Forts mod. They're relatively thick, and sometimes I can get away with some neat tricks hiding one wall within the other. That doesn't always work, but sometimes it can, and it can be helpful. One other advantage that this mod has is the fact that I could change the look of the pieces. For example, this one is basically sandstone. That's what I used for the vast majority of the construction. But I could switch it to graystone or even a wooden look if I so desired. Or one they call dark matter, which has kind of a jade, mystic jade sort of look to it. And I can do that with the pillars as well. I didn't end up doing that, but when we got right down to it, I left most everything sandstone just because it seemed to fit the area so well. But there is a problem using this mod. These pieces are basically 1.5 times normal size, and that's so that you have plenty of headroom, and it works very well for certain things, but it also means that you can have trouble mixing and matching it with other mods. There is a way that you can get around that though, and I'll show you that once we go inside. Now, here we are upstairs in my personal quarters. I used standard walls for the outer wall here. Over the balcony, it didn't matter as much. I didn't have to try and hide anything, really. But I still had that problem of these walls being bigger overall than a standard wall. Let me remove this ceiling. Let me point to it here with my trusty 45 caliber pointer. That right there is just the edge of this ceiling. I'm going to pull that out just so that you can see a little bit better. Okay. See, that's a standard wall piece. It's from the Squieee Craft mod. It's a standard size. It could have been a wall from anything. But then I had this gap up at the top. Let me float up here and pull that out. That's how it would have looked if I had just left it as is. And it would have looked kind of silly if I had used a standard wall here going up above. From the inside it would have looked fine, but from the outside it would have looked goofy. So instead I used Squieee Craft's half walls, which fit in there just perfectly. You may have to fiddle a little bit by hitting Q to find the right spot, and we'll do that. There we go. And since you can change the look of these, I used look number 3. There we go. It formed a nice border along the top. Now, I didn't have to use this half wall from the Squieee Craft mod. I could have used, for example, a standard half wall from the Structures Plus mod, which a lot of folks use. Oops, I didn't quite put that in the right spot, though. Let's pick that back up. There we go, right there. And change it to a half wall. There. But it didn't quite have the look that I wanted. I wanted it to match, at least to a degree. So let's pull it back out and put our Squieee Craft wall back in place. Now that's a little trick that you can use anytime you use the Castles, Keeps, and Forts mod, or really any one of a couple of different building mods that are out there that have oversized pieces. You can fill in with regular and half wall combinations. That's just a little tip that I think you might find handy. And ceiling back in place, and she's good as new. Close her sliding door. There we go. The Squieee Craft mod also has some nice pillars that you can use for a variety of purposes. To fill in certain areas there, I've put a couple of pillars in place. Both corner pillars, which is a great feature of this mod, a little corner brace, and of course the horizontal pillars going all the way across, in this case, to form, well, a nice border. And that up there is a little accent. Now, when it comes to pillars, I did have some questions regarding how I placed these pillars on the corner. These are standard Castles, Keeps, and Forts pillars. They've got a couple of different building sets. There's the standard Keep building set that has the nice rounded and stone ones there. This is from the Villager set that they have. And we can change the look of those pillars to whatever we want. I think I used English oak. Yeah, I used English oak there. But I did have some folks that had questions about how to place them on the corners and front edges. Now, in Vanilla Arc, you can approximate that using fence supports to get your railing in the right spot. With the Castles, Keeps, and Forts mod and certain other ones, it's actually even easier than that. Let me generate some here and I'll show you how that's done. Okay, let's say for some reason we wanted a standard support pillar, really from Vanilla Arc or any other mod, and we wanted to put it here. All I need to do if I've got Castles, Keeps, and Forts is instead of putting this ceiling in where it normally would go, let's just move in a little closer, and you see it's got snap points that allow it to overlap, just like that. Now we can take a pillar and put it right in the center like normal. And now we've got a nice support pillar just where we want it to be, half in and half out of the wall. And of course I can take that all the way up to the ceiling like that, and then remove what we put in place to allow that. Let's pick it up. And there we go. We've got a nice pillar exactly where we want it. We could change that to wood if we wanted to, so it would blend in better, and do that all the way down. Alright, there we go. A perfect support pillar in exactly the position we like. I could have used any pillar, really. It would have gone there because it snaps to that ceiling piece that's half in and half out, just like normal. Now, I also had some questions about the garden area, which is understandable. It's kind of a, whoops, come here, little fella. All right, you go play over there. Most of these are from the various Ecos mods, the plants and trees and such. I had to choose carefully. One of the more unique things about this construction are these bees. Now, I just spawned in a standard beehive, and then I went ahead and destroyed the hive and force-tamed these bees. I took them off, well, made sure they weren't on wander, and put them where I wanted them to be. And I think it lends a nice little touch. I would have had them wander, hi Mr. Crab, I would have had them wander all throughout the garden, but they tend to get to the walls and want to keep going and end up stuck inside and outside the walls. Flying creatures have a tendency to do that. So instead I had to live with putting them in one spot, but it really doesn't bother me that much. The water sounds that you hear come from this particular fountain from the server donation system mod, and I can turn that off if I really feel like I need to, just by hitting music on off. Water sounds gone. Now they're back on. You may not be able to hear that in this video. The actual wildlife sounds that you hear come from this statue from that same mod. I can go in here, turn off all the bird chirps and the animal cries in the background, but I like it, so I'm going to leave it on. And as I kind of alluded to before, the Castles, Keeps, and Forts mod has these standard keep tile sets with the variable textures that you can get for a wide variety of effects. But they also have a couple of others. There's a Settlers tier, which is kind of a, well, it's kind of rustic. Reminds me of a set that you might use to recreate a basic, very primitive village, or perhaps a Wild West scenario with a lot of irregular wooden pieces. In some cases, the planks are pulled up partially at the ends to give it a very weathered and beaten look. And then if you want something in between, there's this Villagers tile set, which has these nice brick pieces, which can be changed to a variety of textures that are different from the other tile sets. There's Cotswold stone, which is what I used in the walls over there. I kind of like the herringbone brick, though, for the garden. For some reason, in my mind, the brick just works really well for the walkways in this garden area. And, of course, it's tiered because I had to deal with the actual massive sand dune that forms the back of this building. But I did like the Cotswold stone for my personal chambers. We can look in through the window there. There's the downstairs of my part of the construction. And over here we have the downstairs area of my daughter's room. Over in my daughter's room, I wanted a little bit cozier look and feel to the place. So instead of adding that extra layer on top, I simply laid in a false ceiling, complete with skylights, as you can see. It was relatively easy to do, and I was able to fill in the gaps with either regular walls for this little raised skylight or half walls where necessary, but it really wasn't necessary very often because for the most part, everything up above that ceiling is hidden. All in all, I think it worked out rather well. Oh, and before I forget, in answer to some of the questions I had, the bathroom fixtures are all from the Building Extras mod. All of them have running water. They even have a shower that you can put in here if you want to. It was just a little too tall for what I had in mind. Oh, and before I forget, the various kitchen appliances are from the Squieee Craft mod. To help with weatherproofing and general security, I use the glass walls from the Structures Plus mod and inset them inside the Castles, Keeps, and Forts walls. As you can see, you can't really tell, although if you add a little bit of a tint to the windows, you can clearly pick up, let me put the frames back on there, you can clearly pick up that there's glass inset in there, but if I remove the frame from it, it makes it look like it's mounted in the actual stone walls themselves. Let's go ahead and get rid of those. No sides. They're very hard, they're not easily broken, so you shouldn't have any problems with predators coming in. If I make the surrounding territory a little bit more dangerous, I'll end up putting doors leading out to the back balcony, and probably higher walls back here. Just keep predators from prowling around too close to the only vulnerable spot of the build. Now, one last thing from the server donation system mod that I used that I thought added a nice touch. Let's come out here. If you want mood music to play whenever you're out here on the patio, that little dragon statue that I've put out in the center with the flame coming out of its mouth actually has a very nice kind of Arabian Nights type music coming from it all the time. It can be turned off as well, but I like that. Anytime I'm running around on the lake shore or out here on the patio, I can hear it. I think it adds a nice ambiance. And then as I come in closer to the waterfall sounds from this fountain take over. And then finally, in close to my little garden, the wildlife sounds take over. Now, I was racking my brains trying to think if there was anything that I had forgotten, and there was one thing. I did have a few people ask about the holographic glowing birds that I have orbiting the actual palace build itself. And that, again, comes from the server donation system mod. This weather vane here to my left is what creates the holographic birds. They glow at night, and they lend kind of a magical quality to the whole build, which I kind of like. It's a little bit much for most builds, but you might find it comes in handy once in a while. Well, this video has gone much longer than I intended, so I'll have to do the rest of it in a second segment here in a day or so, and show you how I set up all the animal life and plant life here in the Oasis. That makes me feel kind of bad because I promised it to you at the beginning of the video, so let me leave you with something by way of compensation, something I don't normally ever do in a video. I'm going to show you a picture of me from Halloween several years ago. Consider it a cautionary tale. If you have a 5-year-old daughter at home, don't ever get conned into letting her do your Halloween makeup. To put it another way, don't let this happen to you. That's all I've got for right now. I'll have that next video out real soon. And until I see you again, good hunting.